Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. My name's Chris Byrne and today we're going to be talking about the 5 things I would like to see in the next version of the Helix. So the Helix has been out since 2015 and since then it's maintained a loyal fan base. Chris Robertson from Blackstone Cherry has actually mentioned selling both his Axe Effects and his Kemper in favour of keeping his Helix. That being said, however, in 2024 the Helix is actually losing a lot of players to the Quad Cortex. As for myself, I've had the Helix since 2018, and around the time that I bought it, it became my main live unit, until of course a certain global pandemic cancelled all of my shows. This means I'm fairly knowledgeable in terms of both what I like about the unit, but also the things I would like to see change. This being said, here are the 5 things that I would like to see change in the next version of the Helix. Now, first of all, and somewhat controversially, I think it's time to remove the expression pedal from the Helix. Now, one of the advantages that the Helix does have is the fact that it has an expression pedal as part of the unit, which is great for the people who do use it, myself included in that. The thing about this, however, is it increases both the size and the weight of the Helix compared to, say, both the Fractal FM9 and the Quad Cortex. Those units are more compact and they are lighter as a result of not having one. Especially for the people who don't even use an expression pedal, this makes them more viable in that regard. One thing you'll often see as well with both the FM9 and the Quad Cortex is a lot of people will have a pedal board put together where the expression pedal is part of that, or even like one of the smaller like Jim Dunlop ones. So by removing the expression pedal, you give people that option to have a more compact pedal board solution. Now, the second thing I would like to see is improved build quality. As far as I'm aware, the foot switches in the Helix use connectors which are actually very similar to the ones you would find in a common laptop. As I mentioned in my first video, my Helix is currently having issues with its foot switches. For example, it won't switch between presets properly, it won't, say, turn the tuner on, or it'll just like put it on briefly, and when I release my foot, it will take it off, or it will send the BPM counter crazy. And the issue that I've had with this is that when I've tried to take it to line 6 or the repair center to fix it, neither of them seem to be willing to even take the unit off me to fix it. As I mentioned in my first video, my Helix is currently having issues with its foot switches. So for example, when I try to change presets, it won't register it. When I try and use my expression pedal, if I take my foot off, it won't always go down to 0%. So this can cause problems with like whammy effects, for example. Even things like if I try and turn my tuner on, when I take my foot off, it will just take the tuner off because the relays in those switches have worn out. The issue that is then caused is when I try to take it to either line 6 or their repair center to fix it, I've so far been unsuccessful in this regard. Now, of course, any piece of gear will need a level of maintenance. However, at the time when I was using it live, I'd only roughly done about 20 shows with it before the pandemic hit. You compare this to my Boss GT100, which for 6 years prior to that, it was my main live unit being used all throughout the year in a 4 cable method with my amp. That unit was still running very solid and strong the entire time with no issues with the foot switch or the general usage of it whatsoever. Now, if Line 6 are going to make it that hard for me to get my unit fixed, then the very least they could do is make the unit more durable. Now, the third thing I would like to see is increased flexibility in how we control the unit. Currently, it's already very good. For example, you can have, say, 8 presets, you can have 8 snapshots, you can have, say, 4 presets and 4 snapshots. You can change those to be stomps instead. You can have those rows reversed. You get the idea. It's a very flexible unit in that regard. What I'd like us to be able to do is change all of this. Say, for example, you don't need to bank up and down, but what you do need to do is have more presets on that bottom row or snapshots on that bottom row. You could just get rid of that bank up and down feature and then just replace those bottom 5 with snapshots if you wanted to. Even if you wanted 6 on the bottom because you don't use the Helix's tuner because you have an external tuner, for example, you can just remove that part of that functionality so that you can do that. Or even say things like, let's say you want to have the bottom 4 middle as snapshots and then you want 2 further snapshots above it, so say 5 and 6. Let's say you want those next 2 foot switches just to be stomp on and offs. Maybe that could be something where you could assign it. Or even if you don't, say, use the stomp mode at all and you want it assigned to be able to assign that foot switch to something else, that's just something I would like to see given to us in the future. Just give us the control for how we use our Helix in live situations. This leads me on to point 4, and that's increasing the power within the Helix. Where this issue most presents itself is when you compare it to both the Axif 3 and the Quad Cortex. The best example I can give is the Helix's polytune effect eats up a lot of the DSP within the Helix, whereas any kind of pitch shifting done in the Axif 3 and the Quad Cortex generally means you still have a lot of headroom in terms of what else you can add on top of your effects chain, which makes it a much more versatile live unit compared to the Helix. Now that's just one example, but when you also consider things like the Axif being able to run multiple amps at once with not really too much issue, or say the fact that Neural are now putting their plugins onto the Quad Cortex, Line 6 needs to make sure that it is keeping up with its competitors, otherwise it runs the risk of being left behind. Now that's just one example, but when you also consider things like the Axif being able to run multiple amps at once with not really too much issue, or say the fact that Neural are now putting their plugins onto the Quad Cortex, Line 6 needs to make sure that it is keeping up with its competitors, otherwise it runs the risk of being left behind. And finally, for number 5, it's expanding on the number of amps and effects in the Helix. We've already got a great lineup to choose from. We are currently on firmware 3.71, and the Helix has 83 amps and 213 effects to choose from. So we've already got a very good solid lineup. This is nothing, however, compared to Fractal's 328 amp models and 220 effects. This is made even more impressive when you consider the amount of legacy effects which are currently within the Helix. Now, there's plenty of amps I would like to see added to the Helix, so the Diesel Herbert, the Marshall JVM, the EVH 5150s, just to name a few. And when you consider that Neural are now putting their plugins onto the Quad Cortex, Line 6 needs to make sure that they are keeping up with their competitors, otherwise they run the risk of becoming the third choice and being left behind. Anyway, those are my 5 things I would like to see in the next version of the Helix. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, if you want to leave something in the comments below on what you do like, what you don't like, what you would like to see change. If you did like the video, of course, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you.